Welcome to the SWBL podcast presented by 1356 Public House. And tonight I am joined by Professor Pete to break down all of the power rankings. Now that we have, put all of the captain interview or team interview podcasts out, we know the order of the overall team rankings, and now we can really dive into some of the details of how those rankings came about. And who better to do it with than the man, the myth, the legend who really loves numbers. So, Peter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me. Feels like it's been a while since a podcast, aside from popping in on John's podcast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, guys, that's what we're going to break down today, and let's just jump into it. So, let's start with some of the I guess categories or some of the factors of wiffle ball, right? And the three different sort of pitching, fielding, hitting. We're gonna start with pitching, and let me run through just so we can kind of lay the groundwork of these rankings. So from 9 to 1, it goes A's, and again, this is pitching only. A's, White Sox, Expos, Marlins, Astros, Rockies, Twins, Yankees, Orioles. So, with that being the case, what kind of, I guess, overall thoughts on that, or do you want to just jump into like who you think is too high, who's too low? What do you think,
Yeah.
Peter?
So pitching, Orioles A plus. With the Jackson acquisition, I think that probably gives it a plus. Maybe it was an A before. Yankees, yes, Twins. You kind of see the top three there. I feel like some of these other teams, well, Rockies, you got a Cy Young contender, so that's going to give you a B plus at a minimum, I would say. But some of the teams I think about, Marlins always had the same guys, but I don't see them ever getting above a B
Mm-hmm.
with what they've been doing. And we're going to see some new guys. I think O'Rear pitching for the White Sox, replacing Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a big guy. Um, and then I think some teams like the Rockies, even the Expos, after the Ace, who's going to fill it in? And I think people are probably looking at an Ace saying, "Oh, here's a good score," but that's only 60% of your innings. So there's definitely some unknown here, but I don't see anything that is overly crazy. The A's certainly are going to have the toughest time, I think, filling their voids.
Yeah. The grades are interesting when you look at this. I mean, you kind of were chatting about that, and the fact that the Rockies, they're ranked with a B plus, and they have the reigning Cy Wiffle winner, and they have a worse grade than the Twins. And nothing against Will, and Will has been, I guess, a contender, but he's never won it. And as far as I can remember, has Spencer ever won Cy Wiffle?
I don't believe so. No.
So the Rockies have the most recent Cy Wiffle winner, yet they get a worse grade than the Twins.
Right, right.
That's kind of baffling. Yeah, I agree with the Orioles getting an A plus. I think again the big question is how is that rotation going to look when you've got three guys and only 30 innings to pitch in the regular season. So I think everybody's interested to see how John manages that. Um, the Yankees, yeah, you've got well, Scott had a great season last year, which he needed to have because Gus didn't have the best year, but Gus
Mhm.
is a Cy Wiffle winner, has been really strong. So, A minus maybe there. Um, I
And what?
think, yeah, I mean, it's also ironic, I think, too. I think of if you look at the Marlins and their grades, I think most people, if you look at them, you're going to say, well, hey, their pitching has improved, but it's not stellar. It's nothing that puts fear in anybody yet. The Expos have the same grade and they have Jimmy, and that definitely strikes fear in people and batters. So the grades, we'll get more into some of the grades later, but when you're kind of kicking it off like that, it kind of baffles you. I think, maybe you switch the Twins and the Rockies here with pitching, in my opinion. So, um, but yeah, anybody that you feel is obviously too high.
It's hard to say. obviously. I mean, to your point about it's interesting, the Rockies and Twins. So if Jason pitches the second most innings like he did last year, and Spencer pitches second again, I mean, you look at their stats last year, they are nearly identical in everything. Um, ERA is pretty close, innings pitched, earned runs. I mean, so they're pretty even, at least for last year.
Mm-hmm.
So does I guess it would be handed back to Jason. I feel like when Blake pitches, he's a very good pitcher, but when he's pitching, I feel like it's usually not good because that means the other pitching's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't the case last year, but I don't have major gripes with pitching. I feel like we could go. Well, I don't want to be too hard on the ace. Let's move along to the next one.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say if I were picking something, I would say maybe the Marlins are a little too high.
Yeah,
Um, again, I think my biggest change would be switching the Rockies and the Twins. But anybody that you feel is too low that didn't maybe get the credit that they deserve.
you know, I don't think so. I mean, White Sox, I know losing Jackson stinks, but I know Ryan O'Rear has a very good knuckleball.
Mhm.
Maybe it's the but new best knuckleball in town. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. And they did add
So,
David. David's a proven starter.
mhm.
David has been really good for the Astros over the last few years. And I get that, they kind of go back to the unknown because, yeah, we expect Ryan to maybe be okay, but there's a learning curve there. What is it going to be? He's still a rookie. We don't know how good he could be, how good his knuckleball is or isn't. I've seen other people try to throw a knuckleball in this league and it get, taken yard all over and over and over. So who knows? I think that is probably why they're lower. But anything else that you would change when it comes to pitching or anything maybe we should highlight?
No, I mean, I don't think I'll be pitching much for the Orioles with that A
Right.
plus trio they got.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, that was quick. Let's jump into fielding rankings. Um, so again, to lay the rankings out here, starts with 9-1 Expos, A's, Marlins, White Sox, Astros, Rockies, Orioles, Yankees, Twins.
Yeah.
So again, what do you overall thoughts? Who do you think's too high? Who do you think's too low?
Well, I mean, I look at the Astros B plus. Cole made a few errors after winning the gold hands, the platinum hands. Good, but Cole, Metter, BK, don't we all associate them in a similar class, I think. Maybe Cole less so, he's newer, but that seems to be why not, four A's, it's really a team sport. It's kind of judgmental a little bit here, but I think we're basically saying there's some teams that have very good defense and there's some that are a little less proven. I mean, the Expos are probably always going to lead in errors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the A's, I guess it's like Steve playing left field, perhaps. I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
new.
Yeah, I think you lose. I mean, you lose your platinum hands winner from last year and Paul. And so yeah, you think that Steve would move over. He's got the most experience in the field. He's a previous gold hands winner, so logic says that's the move this year. Um, but yeah, what else you think here?
Well, Yankees and Orioles, they don't have one of those perennial left fielders, but I think collectively they have a team of guys that can float through. So, and I think historically the error rate's been low. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with those. I mean, Marlins just beat across the board. Luke's a guy that can make amazing plays, but then make an error.
Mm-hmm.
I'd push the Athletics down a little bit into the maybe the C plus range. I'd probably give the Expos a C minus. And I know they had maybe eight errors last year. They probably, if they lead every year, I feel like C
Mm-hmm.
is average. Well, I'd say that's below average. You know, but anything can happen. I would say with
Yeah.
this ball.
Yeah, for sure. It is a funny ball. I think, not to be biased, obviously, I'm the captain of the Astros, so there's an aspect of bias, but you know, Cole, obviously, he had a few errors last year. I can't remember how many he had. It wasn't, I don't think, a huge number.
It's three.
It was three. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
bigger than what you expect out of a platinum hands, but still nothing horrible. We've seen numbers a lot higher than that. But then you've got a gold hands winner at pitcher and Cam. He wins gold hands last year. And I think Caleb, I don't know what it shows for his errors, but I know that he didn't have an error until the playoff game. So he's no slouch in right field. So the Astros get a B plus. They get some love there, but I think again, I think some of these teams are getting put up higher based on people who are on their team, and it seems like the Astros don't get that credit with Cole, and kind of like the Orioles last year. I know the Orioles didn't like their grade going into last season when they had a really low error rate, even
oh
though you
yeah,
didn't have
zero.
even though you didn't have
A
that
name.
prototypical name in left field, you had no errors and you got a lower grade because of because you didn't have that name. That changes this year, but then it almost like goes against other teams. Like it's still the same mindset in the voters' minds where I don't know, they just overlook some stats or overlooking things. So, I'm curious. I know BK's incredible, but I'm curious what the Rockies' errors were last year. Um, Obviously the Twins are always going to be up there. The Orioles and the Yankees, yeah, um they don't have a lot of errors, but I wonder um how
So
many
BK had three errors along with Cole, so it was weird. It was very quickly. Okay, well, let's look at Chris Metter, who had no errors, but not a
he
lot
didn't
of
have the yeah,
chances.
he didn't. That was what he lost. Why he lost platinum hands because there were so many attempts and chances, and I think Paul blew him out of the water when it came to assists. Um, and so I guess my point too is with the Orioles and the Yankees, how many uh, opportunities are they having? I'm curious to know like how many attempts they're getting on ground ball rates from their pitchers. I would assume pretty decent. Um, and maybe it is just the rotation that is keeping it fresh there. But I don't know. What do you remember about that? I mean, I feel like Brett
Brett
gets a lot
Brett
of
had
ground balls.
a lot of pop-ups right to him.
Yeah.
And Sam strikes people out quite a bit. 16.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the assist numbers are going to be down, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Which we don't mind.
no, yeah, I'll take the easy out for sure.
I think just like pitching, people see a big name, Gus. Therefore, he's really going to carry them in the hitting, even if the rest of his team is subpar. But at the end of the day, sometimes the guy really going off can carry the team. Like that guy he's carrying more than 25% of the load. So they might be an A because they have a star left fielder, for example, in that
Yeah,
dimension.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, fielding, what I'm really interested to see is right field. So we all talk about left field, but right field's a skill position with the trees, and now with the founder's porch,
Hmm.
watching out for the wall, getting heckled
Yeah.
by people,
Yep.
probably getting like, I don't know if someone throws a drink on someone, do we kick them out? Like, do we have an
Hmm.
usher for that? Like, those are the questions I have in right field for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything from this order that you would maybe change?
Um, I feel like I put the Astros above the Whites. Well, no, you're right. I'm looking at it backwards. No, I mean, I think it's fair. It's a lot of A's, which we kind of talked early on, like how do we separate teams? But
Hmm.
if we think there's a tier and then another tier, I guess that's what it is. But we all know that two of these four teams are going to commit probably a few more errors than they typically do. And, it's not all going to end that way.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, that takes us to everybody's favorite topic, hitting, and why we play wiffle ball. Um, so rankings for hitting in reverse order: Expos, A's, Astros, White Sox, Marlins, Rockies, Twins, Orioles, Yankees. Thoughts?
So I'm looking at the power numbers from last year. Like the Yankees, far and away highest, like nearly batted 600 as a team. Oh my God, 23 more home runs than the Twins in second. Like what? Total bases? Geez, I can't even count that high. So the Yankees deserve it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Orioles at A, you got to get this. I look at things and I'm like, do people know that Jackson's an Oriole? And in this case, maybe they do. I mean, it seems, I would say it kind of seems, the Orioles actually, oof, fifth in average last year. And so that wasn't great. 39 home runs, that's tied for sixth. PG had a down year. I had a down year.
Hmm.
We'll have to fix one of those and replace one of those. Twins, I mean, Twins deserve that second spot. I mean, they finished there last year. So Astros finished third in average last year. Well, third in on base percentage. I mean, third in home runs. You pitched the Astros what, seventh or sixth? Sixth.
They are ranked seventh.
Seventh. Yeah, I mean that there's somebody that I need to put below them, I would say, which is maybe the White Sox. The Marlins at seven then.
No, the White Sox were at, so it's Expos A's, Astros were seven, White Sox six, Marlins five, Rockies four.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that 4 to 7 is I'm good on 1 and 2 and 3, I guess. At least having them all up there. I mean, Rockies, White Sox, Astros, Marlins. I put the Astros at seven, the White Sox at six, the Astros at five. So I think I'm really mixing up that section,
Hmm.
in my humble opinion.
How did the
Um,
Rockies, like, do you have some of their stats pulled up?
last year, yeah. So they were fourth in average. Um, they had 43 home runs, which was fourth. Um, fourth in RBIs. I mean, kind of crazy to see them in four. They were a wild card team, so that would make sense. Seems like they belong there. Seems like they had such a bad year the year before. Last year was great. I could see it. I could see last year being, well, they were what, 6 and 4. I feel like 5 and 5 is I want to say it's a floor for them.
Hmm.
So they've got enough experienced guys, and then Tony coming in new. They got to replace Grant,
Hmm.
but they've got five or six guys to do that with. So I feel like I'm good with them at four
Hmm.
in their own little category. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely good on how it starts and how it finishes.
Yeah. It's interesting when you break down the stats like that with, the Astros being third in average, third in OBP, third in home runs, and they're seventh. The Rockies being fourth and then being in the four spot. You know, the White Sox, maybe everybody's counting on second half tie and being there and that being the big difference. Plus, again, I think a lot of people have high hopes for Ryan O'Rear, so they're putting more stock into what could be versus what may be. The Marlins, I think people still remember 2 years ago and Jordan and Luke being really, really good.
Mhm.
Um, so it seems like this one, I would agree. I think this one probably is the most messed up. If you're looking at last year's stats,
True.
um, I think part of it comes with name and recognition and not just what have you done lately, but also what have you done over your career. I also think, you mentioned the Orioles getting an A, and I think that I think the Jackson thing does come into play because I think everybody's assumption is, he's backfilling PG's loss, and PG had probably statistically his worst year. So everybody assumes that that hole gets filled a little bit better, even if, I don't think Jackson had his best year last year either, but I think it was still better than PG's. So, and nobody expects you to stay kind of down. You've been an MVP and you've proven it too. So there's the history there. So I think of all of the rankings, this is one where I think people could be maybe more angry or more elated, where it shook out. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm initially I'm looking a lot at last year, and I am one that definitely goes on record saying, I would look at least like the last few years. I used to always go back to 2017 because that was the first pitch strike initiation, but like that's 7 years ago. I mean, we're
mhm.
a lot different than we were then.
Yeah, I made
Yeah.
I made an all-star game that year. I was an all-star that year. Like,
Hey,
yeah, things have changed.
yes, yes. I was MVP one point. That was a long time ago. But it's in, the Orioles people are clearly expecting a lot because Jackson and I finished 32nd and 33rd in average, right around 400. Um, PG was 45. So like that is I feel like the team numbers should definitely go up a decent amount this year. I mean, we had 75 runs scored, which was less than the Marlins, less than the Rockies, less than the Astros, etc. Um, and fun fact, we had the same amount of runs against us as the Twins, 58. The Yankees were 55. Wow. Yeah, Yankees crushed it last year, 76 run differential.
Yeah, it was huge. The Twins had the second highest run differential, I believe,
Yep,
plus
yep.
22 or something like that.
42 for
42.
the
Yeah.
Twins.
Okay.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not gonna keep myself up at night and be angry about these rankings. Sometimes in the past I might have let that happen, but not
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, that brings up a good point. Something I've been thinking about a lot as I host these podcasts and as I coming off the captain interviews, and how serious should we take this? Like, I want to, as a host, kind of peek behind the curtain for anybody, for, that person who's out there listening to this podcast, that one person. But,
Hey, friend.
you know, I, uh, I try to, bring up talking points. I try to take things as serious as I can. So it brings some sort of enjoyment to the content, but I don't, it's wiffle ball. How serious should we take it? How serious should people take these grades?
They really, they really shouldn't. I mean, it's just like anything else, opinions or politics you disagree with, the type of people that are probably going to take it seriously, the type of people that love a good, healthy debate and get a little angry when someone disagrees with them. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's fun to look back. I mean, I write predictions all the time. They're so wrong when it comes to the actual season. Like I always like to go back and see, okay, we were way too high on this guy. And more than that, I think we're definitely going to see that well, I guess it comes with both. There's some guys that we're not high enough on as a group that don't have their pictures on there, I would say. And they got this year to prove it. And then we have one extra slot next year. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, when it comes to the voting, do you're a voter? I'm a voter. If you don't know, it's the front office that votes and the captains that vote for this. Should should we change that? Do you think that's the right move?
I think this is what we need to do. I would say I'm not opposed to letting anybody vote, any player, I don't know about fans, but we need to have a committee or person, one, two, three people to get together. First of all, you got to screen ballots. You see a ballot that just looks terrible. I could think of two people in mind. I'm not going to say their names, but I could look at a ballot, see that it's so weird, not know the name, just know that that's off. Probably someone from a certain team. There's some outliers.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam, we do kind of cut some of the most generous rankings to kind of blend it in the middle. But if you get a couple people of different backgrounds to agree on things, like you just kind of want to manipulate what a silly person said for
Mm-hmm.
the right reasons to come out with a better product. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's micromanaging or just kind of taking it over, but it's for the right reasons, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a little bit of talk about voting strategy. Um, you know, should should every team, like, should the voters say, one only one team can get one grade, so you'd only give one A plus to one team in each category, and one A and one A minus, and so on and so forth, right? Down to, I guess, C minus, unless you really want to hit home on somebody and give them a D or an F. But should we do it that way? And then it makes it a little bit more clear and more parity. Or also, yeah, again, who votes? I mean, that, with the front office and the captains being involved, that does mean that certain teams have more votes than others. And while I hope that there's integrity with all the voters, I think there's always going to be a little bit of inherent bias toward your own team, even if you don't think you are. So I was always curious about that. Any thoughts on that, or am I just thinking too much about this? Probably thinking too much about this.
Well, I feel like we are only because, I mean, we don't mind it, but I think if you put a voter in a spot where it's like, okay, Yankees, Orioles, Twins, Rockies, I think they're all like an A, but oh no, now it's got to be A minus, B plus. Like you're going to have to really make them adjust that. It'll take a little time. People like you and me don't mind pouring that time into the
Yeah.
league. And if you really feel like Yankees, Twins, Orioles all have a great offense, maybe they all deserve A's. But then again, you have to, if the teams are all the same, it's gonna really break them apart. You may not want to try to simplify things for the people out there, but there's a lot of angles you could take.
Yeah. Well, again, we probably shouldn't take this too seriously. It's a wiffle ball game and it's fun.
It
And this
is.
is just really providing content for everybody to try to get excited. Maybe it gives people a chip on their shoulder. I'm sure there are players out there that, or captains that, you know, may just put this up as bulletin board material. But let's get into the overall team rankings and grades. So again, I mean, if you didn't catch on with the way we were releasing the team interviews, we were releasing them this year in reverse order. So from 9 to 1. You may or may not have caught on to that, but if you didn't, I mean, that's on you. So 9 to 1 team rankings were Expos, A's, Marlins, Astros, White Sox, Rockies, Twins, Orioles, Yankees. And the Yankees take that number 1 spot for the second time in a row, even though they did lose the championship. So, what on from the overall team rankings, what were your thoughts on that?
I didn't have any major, I think any switches I made was, one spot up or down. I mean, if I start at the bottom, I mean, the Expos, I see them at 9. I mean, I had some doubts about the A's. I still do. But honestly, after listening to the podcast, like I kind of fell in love with Evan Quell a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's great.
And I mean, they're riding with 4 guys. Expos, if they're not 9, it's clearly going to be because of Sam. I can hit 7 home runs and 19 at bats because that's what he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's going to be their guy, but it's pretty much the same squad, right? Low averages, probably like 6.5 homers apiece between those other 4 guys. Um, we talked about their fielding. I mean, pitching, I think Jimmy can, I feel like he's kind of stabilized a little bit. He's probably lead the league in strikeouts again. But I feel like he's getting hit at times, or maybe just getting drunk, and then
Mm-hmm.
getting hit. Um, I don't think, 1 and 9, I think is the high point for them. And I think they likely could sneak a win because they're going to find a game where they're really going to try. Probably an early game, I'm thinking. And I don't want to write them off because I mean, Sam Michelab, he gets more than 19 at bats. He's he played a lot of left. I think I expect to see him out there. And if it's, he could pitch, I guess it's be Jeremy backing up Jimmy. So I got Expos at 9. Maybe just keep rolling up to the top.
Yeah, keep going.
So A's at 8. Yeah, I mean, so with Keaton and Evan, Steve, and Chris Forback, who'll be back now after a year off for the most part. They're like, I feel like once I look at those 4 guys, I'm like, okay, they're kind of a pretty high floor, but a low ceiling team. And like I was like, did Evan even bat much? And I was like, whoa, Evan led the team in average, 500 last year. And so I feel like he's And then like, we love Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
He came on real strong with his crazy pitching and his bat. So I mean, that's a pretty similar, Steve, I think Steve had a great year a while back. He could get high home runs. Forbeck can hit for average, I think, pretty well. And I mean, it's just there's not enough historical reliable data for me, Brian, to really conclude on this team. But there's some unknowns. They're going to need an all-star too, to make the playoffs, I think. So there's almost 60 at bats from Paul, Alex, and Mike Carl that will divide out back to Vorbeck and then to the others.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, they got us in their division, with the Rockies, I believe. So
Yeah. So they got a tough division too.
yeah. So to me, those are safe. I mean, you get up to 7. I've rolled with the Marlins, which I believe is what the front
Yeah,
office
that's right.
had. I mean, same squad. They've never really done anything super impressive past the playoff appearance. So I feel like if you don't do too much new, and then you have a down year from Luke and not the huge year from Jordan, there's nothing really exciting there for South Beach. I will say though, Fat J, dude, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
His brother actually crushed a home run off me last Thursday in slow pitch softball down in Fenton.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Dude, guy's a monster. But Fat J, dude, he was third in on base percentage last year, average. Hopefully he had what do you have? 34 bats, so like 25th, but they've got a lot. Corey, Trent, and Eli, if they want to give up some of their 41 ABs,
Mm-hmm.
maybe to Fat J, um, that might be smart. And I mean, I will say that the trio of Jordan and Luke, and if Fat J does what Fat J did, that's a pretty good trio. You
Yeah.
know, Maybe not with like the Yankees or the Twins or Orioles, I suppose, but I mean, respectable trio, of the pitching. So I just feel like it kind of stays where it's at, like 8-9 ERA, or maybe in the sevens at times. So it's hard to go higher from the Marlins, even though last couple of years they were highly recognized, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, so now let's get into what's a little different. I mean, it's 6. Office has got the Astros. I mean, I'm going to go with the White Sox. So this is where I'm different, but only by 1. Um, so John led the team in offense last year. I mean, pretty much across the boards. And, if they had tied the whole full season, and I know John would say, change a game or two. So I do respect that, and I do understand that. I mean, Jackson's year wasn't last year wasn't the best, but I think that just means he's probably gonna just crush it even more. So you lose Jackson, but you get David, you get O'Rear. I'm assuming Ty Butler's like a game time decision until he knows that the
Yeah.
football team
Yeah, the baseball team. I don't know.
baseball.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the same as last year. If they make the playoffs, he's committed to that. So, but they won't know until basically around that time. So I haven't heard, what their thoughts are on, I guess, predicting how good his team is, how good the high school team is there or not. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's the same situation as last year, at least right now. Um, and that they're kind of just hoping that the team doesn't quite make the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, that's a
Or
big change, and one that would make me regret. When you get to this point, like out of the playoff spot in the rankings, like every year you feel kind of bad and you're like, well, who do we pick on this year?
Mhm.
Um, and I was in that spot. I think last year it worked out. I think, without Ty, it's Derek or Tyler Omlid, going to be hitting. Um, Derek's got to bounce back. Tyler did not have a very good introduction of the year last year. He's really handsome though.
Mhm.
So I just, it's a lot on Ty, but I think
So
O'Rear
are
and
you
Dave.
are you slotting Dave in to full-time hitting then? Like so John.
Well, I that's a good point. I mean, so O'Rear Dave, John. So maybe it's a combination of those five with Dave.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was promised, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We have something in common. We both let Dave go, and now
Yeah,
he's
we
off
did.
with someone else.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to let things go when you love them, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, in hindsight, I don't feel super great, but I just felt like recognizing the Astros more, I think, based on last year. I mean, I guess so. Cam, Cole, Jimmy, Caleb, Brian, right? Is that the five?
Yeah, it's those five.
So, I mean, I would say like Cam and Cole, they were Bash Brothers last year.
Yeah.
I mean,
They did good. Yeah.
so I think we know we'll get, and I think it took a few years from OIF or just coming into the league, but like a little tardy to the party, but I'm expecting them to stay like top. There's kind of a changing of the guard, I feel like, with more veteran players kind of falling down and newer guys coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm going past the unknown here with Jimmy's amount of ABs historically, how you, Caleb, you all split the fourth. I mean, your sample size is low, Brian, sort of low, but it's the numbers are solid.
Mm-hmm.
When you've given yourself a shot. So Caleb last year, I guess he batted a little bit, 375. No, only 8 bats. So to me, Caleb's pretty new. You're not new, but Jimmy he's not really new as well. I mean, I'd say Cole's like a top two, top three hitter last year. So if you can kind of keep that again, he steps back in the field, but he, steps up at the plate.
Mm-hmm.
You've made the playoffs, what, a couple times, twice in the last
Yeah.
few
We
years.
yeah, we made it. Yeah, I think we're 0-3 technically, but yeah, we've made the playoffs a couple times, like kind of every other year over the past couple years.
Yeah. So I'm kind of at the end of the day, I'm going with cohesion, experienced group, dynamic, um, more experienced captain. I mean, there's a lot of dramatic situations that can happen over the years on the
Mm-hmm.
field, off the field. So that's my real first sticking point, I guess, which takes us into four, where I got the Rockies,
Mm-hmm.
which is where they landed.
Yep.
So Blake and Brian, Chad, Jason Bestenholm. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Adam North and Tony Cochran. So same team. You sub Grant out for Tony and his 35 at bats. So I mean, they've got the chance to, I guess, between Jason and Blake are batting for sure. BK, Adam, Tony splitting it up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they just kind of regain their confidence and their swag. Like, not a team you want to play in the playoffs. Um, a guy like Brian, I feel like he's going to lock down left field this time, and I feel like Chad's really gotten the hang. Like, I'll definitely have him in my top three. Cy Whiffles, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like they got three Mo Whiff guys that I played past summer league with Tony. Or what was it, a fall tournament? We did something fun. But Tony was on our team. He did really good. He could pitch too. So I like the experience here. Um, and I think it's like scrappy hitting. It's, taking walks, getting on base. I think
Yeah.
Jason will be the one to help me prove this right if they really hold it for, like, if he has a pretty great year in support of Blake. So that's what I got for four. And then three, I mean, Twins, I definitely stuck them there. I mean, even though, I mean, they had, you know, I mean, if you compare the Orioles last year, only one game off in record, but they had 25 more runs scored and the same amount of runs against. So like their pitching staff put up the same as ours. Um, so Jackson coming in helps me here the past 2 years of getting there. And it's kind of a new team for the O's. But I mean, for the Twins, you know what you're going to get, and it's like it's a very safe. I mean, I want to say their floor is 3, but like I could see them just scrounging for a wild card spot. I mean, they always talk like that's their strategy, but I feel like they're too good for that this year. So I feel like they're definitely going to finish tier 1. I mean, it's just let's see what they every year. I'm like, what do the Twins do for batting? You know, who batted? Will or Edlow? So I mean, Edlow and Will, holy cow, they both had 22 at bats. You think they did that on purpose?
Hmm.
Maybe it was, and I mean, very well. Edlow had 6 home runs, first 3, similar amount of hits. So that didn't really make averages. Oh, let's see. Oh, I see what happened. Yeah, I mean that them being kind of comparable is not going to help anything, but Will is going to be pretty solid. I actually did something where I compared Will's pitching numbers to Gus's pitching numbers for like the first pitch strike era, and it's like nearly identical. I mean, Gus has won a Cy Wiffle or two, maybe. Will's always been close, but like he's that caliber of Gus. So if you think about it like
Yeah.
that, Spencer and Corey, I mean, the top 3 of that team is probably the one of the best.
Hmm.
I mean, you can't really knock them anywhere. It used to be pitching, but Spencer's been serviceable. Like sometimes it's not pretty with the numbers, but like they get there, and they're not going to fall much worse than I think they finished last year and have continued to finish. So can't drag them out of the top tier, I think.
Hmm.
Let's go to number 2. I mean, yeah, I did put the Yankees at 2. I've always been a guy to respect the repeat. I mean, yeah, we beat them in the championship, but they beat us in the regular season that year. I mean, their run differential was much higher, but I think it's somewhat of an apples to oranges comparison, and the Orioles team a little bit. I mean, I did hear that the Yankees are going to need a sub for Sam Bakula for their first game on Friday
Really?
against the Orioles. These top 2 teams we're talking about. Yeah, I guess he couldn't come in town yet from California, I believe. So I don't know who it's going to be. I
Yeah.
mean, big shoes to fill, um, but I'm sure they can survive that. And that's just one game. I think the pitching for the Orioles kind of does it for me over the Yankees. I like Scott's year was phenomenal, and he's done that a couple times in the past like decade,
Hmm.
which makes you think it's like, okay, it can't happen again this year, can it? Um, Scott and Gus will have to really pitch pristine, I feel like, to keep up with the options that the Orioles have to throw in there. And yeah, I'd say they're gonna finish with the most runs, the Yankees, I think. But overall, I see the Orioles kind of getting it done. Maybe it's not the power that the Yanks would have, but I feel like the team pitching should probably do the
Hmm.
job there. So I mean, I went against the grain there. I don't think that the preseason curse really exists anymore because somebody broke it a few years ago. So we haven't really, I think we kind of stopped talking about it. But if it existed, I guess I wouldn't mind this year. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Orioles are an interesting team when you kind of break it down that way. I think depending on the argument, you could say that they should slot in either 3-2 or 1, right?
mhm.
I think you laid out a lot of reasons why the Twins should feel like they should be ranked higher based on, the consistency, the hitting, the pitching has been good. You could even say potentially just as good as the Yankees, right? Um, then they did slot in it too. Um, so that pitching definitely elevates them, keeps them up in that high, and they did, but then you can make the argument that hey, they should be one. They're the defending champions, and if you subscribe to that, let's honor that. They should be number one. So you could make a case that the Orioles could fall in any of those top tier slots, depending on your argument, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. I would also agree with you on the White Sox and the Astros. And again, I'm trying not to be biased, but even just simply looking at the way the grades broke out, the Astros were ranked a B in hitting, a B plus in pitching, and a B plus in fielding. The White Sox were ranked a B in hitting, a B minus in pitching, and a B in fielding. So in fact, the Astros had better grades, but were ranked below the White Sox. So maybe that's a flaw in the way that this voting goes, but certainly seems like just based on grades, they should be ranked in that five hole versus the White Sox and have the White Sox down in six.
Yeah, and I just now noticed that, and I guess that really vindicates what I said earlier about
Yeah,
flippy floppy. So
right, right, right. So I guess as we wrap up all of the rankings, if you were, just for argument's sake, if you were a player on any team, what team probably should, uh, I don't want to say be too mad because again, we said don't take this stuff too seriously, but which team do you feel should be most, feel most hurt by the way that these rankings played out?
that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, well, talking a lot about the Astros, but I feel like it's got to be the Astros for that reason. But I mean, that's only really one slot. I mean, if I want to throw a
Yeah.
Rockies comparison, I mean, I mean, but that's the thing. Like I said earlier, there's no drastic difference, but I'm sure the Expos will be the most mad because Jimmy's always tweeting that they're going to go undefeated and stuff. Um, I feel like I guess I would say I mean, Astros are, actually probably Eli and the Marlins now for seven. I mean, I think that's got to be being the last of that middle four. I think is he probably had higher hopes, probably ranked themselves higher, I would think, and maybe feels like they've been there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna switch with the Marlins.
Okay. Yeah. I would yeah, I would agree that it would be maybe the Astros, maybe the Marlins. Um I don't know how much the Expos are going to be surprised by being nine, so I don't know how mad they would actually get and there's something about their character too that they kind of like being in that slot. They kind of like that underdog, complete underdog mentality. I wonder how the A's feel about it. I think that they're pretty confident in the four that they have. Otherwise, they would have drafted somebody, but they didn't. They chose not to make any moves. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to think through kind of maybe how everybody might feel about the way that these rankings came out. I think the Rockies probably have to be the happiest with where they slotted in, at
Yeah,
four, just because now, granted, they had a great year, but 2 years ago they had a terrible year. And I think a lot rides on if Chad can repeat his performance, because if he comes back down to what he was 2 years ago, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're hitting
yeah,
certainly with Jason playing as well as he was last year at the plate. Definitely helps when you come in fourth in a lot of categories as a team. You're going to be in more games, even if your pitching's not as good as it has been. But I think a lot rides on that. So they got to be pretty happy to, like you said, kind of slot in at that top spot of that kind of 4 to 7 range, that
mhm.
that range that everybody sees the most, I don't know, competition in a sense. It feels like a lot of people have really slotted the top three teams into the top three teams and where they are, and nobody really expects that to change. But anything can happen. But it just seems like people are really confident in those top three. A lot of people really don't know between 4 and 7. And then even 8 and 9, you can make an argument, can steal a lot of games. The A's, I know, again, they're losing Paul, Alex. Um, they were in a lot of games last year, though. And
Yeah,
a couple runs here or there changes the landscape of the league. So, um, yeah, it's interesting, and it'll be fun to see how, in the end, how it breaks out. So, Before we close up, any last thoughts on at least the power rankings?
No, I enjoy the fact that people, a handful of people spend a little time to try to put something together. If you put some decent, reasonable votes out there, it's just nice to kind of rationalize it. 'Cause for the longest time, I think it was, yeah, it was front office only, or at some point it was probably just Sam. So it's like he would want other opinions, and
Hmm.
it's good to get some good averages out there and help create kind of the storylines and everything.
For sure. Well, that is going to do it for the second to last, probably. Shoot, I shouldn't say that and actually on record because I might be able to squeeze something else in. But
Nobody
at
will
least
know.
for our power rankings episode here. Again, thanks Pete for jumping on. Let me just bring up our sponsors real quick. Again, 1356 Public House, the season's presenting sponsor. Cardinal Blinds and Shutters, Keddy Eye Center, Corner Pub and Grill, Spencer Gear, Chill Designs, Breck Everdolce Vita, Four Hands Brewery, Sway Dispensary, Logix, Johnny Pops, Ballast Dental Care, and Andy's Frozen Custard. We will have a season preview podcast before the season starts, but we are right on the doorstep. We've got, at least at the time of this recording, we've got one of the preseason games coming up. Game one is happening this weekend. So it is here. It is coming. And I think I'm at least super excited. I know Peter, your face says it all right now. You're super excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's sneaking up fast. Like it
Yeah.
almost sometimes, and this is a year that I've done probably the least amount of articles or, time spent thinking about it. I feel like life is finally caught up with me. But I mean, it's flying by. Sometimes the anticipation, the week up leading up to it, or the months leading up to it is like the best part. So I'm a little afraid that's going to just disappear soon. But that would mean that we're there, and it's Memorial Day weekend. And I got half day Friday, Brian. I got the day off Tuesday. Um, and I'm excited to hang out there. My kids are a little bit older, a little less to handle, but gotta keep my eye on them by the pool.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on here. Stay tuned again, guys, for that season preview. And any other final thoughts,
Oh yeah,
Peter?
I've got one. I was speaking with captain of the Orioles earlier. I listened to the uh, Marlins podcast with Eli, and I believe he said something to the fact that I like pitching against John because it's an automatic out. So when I heard that, that really cut me deep. I mean, I feel like that's going to make Mother's Day dinner at my mom's house awkward when we're all there. So I thought, John, like I'm going to say this to Eli. I'm going to say, Eli, you put yourself on the bump against the Orioles, and we'll let John bat, and let's just see how long it goes. Let's see. You face him a few times. Maybe he gets a hit on his first try, second, third. I mean, put your money there. We'll put our money there, and we'll have some fun.
I love it.
Yeah,
Challenge extended,
try to
Eli,
make things interesting.
for sure. Well, stay tuned. We'll see how that battle goes. And until next time, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Brian.